tackle lesson number 5, A World of Regions. Introduction of World of Regions. Government, associations, societies, and groups form regional organization and or network as a way of coping with the challenges of globalization. Globalization has made people more cognizant of specific areas such as Southeast Asia. How, for instance, did the Philippines come to identify itself with the Southeast Asian regions? Why is it part of a regional grouping known as Association of Southeast Asian Nations or ASEANs? The picture below is an Asian Summit meeting in Australia together with our President Rodrigo Duterte. Here's a video clip of Asian Summit. Please watch. That was an Asian Summit held last October 2021. Okay, let's continue. What is regionalism? Regionalism is often seen as a political and economic phenomenon. The term actually encompasses a broader area. It can be examined in relation to identities, ethics, religion, ecological sustainability, and health. Regionalism is also a process and must be treated as an emergent, socially constituted phenomenon. It means that regions are not natural or given, rather they are constructed and defined by policymakers, economic actors, and even social movements. This lesson will look at regions as political entities and examine what brings them together as they are interlocked with globalization. The other facet of regionalism will then explored, especially those that pertain to identities, ethics, religion, ecological sustainability, and health. This lesson will conclude by asking where all this regionalism are bringing us as a member of nation and as citizen of the world. Okay, here's our first topic, countries, regions, and globalization. Edward D. Mansfield and Helen V. Milner state that economic and political definition of regions vary, but there are certain basic features that everyone can agree on. First, regions are a group of countries located in the same geographically specified area, or are an amalgamation of two regions or a combination or more than two regions, organized to regulate and oversee flows and policy choices. Second, the words regionalization and regionalism should not be interchanged, as the former refers to the concentration of economic flows, while the latter is a political process characterized by economic policy, cooperation, and coordination among countries. Countries respond economically and politically to globalization in various ways. Some are large enough and have a lot of resources to dictate how they participate in processes of global integration. China, for example, offers its cheap and huge workforce to attract foreign businesses and expand trade with countries it once considered its enemies, but now sees as market for its good. Other countries make up for their small size by taking advantage of their strategic location. Singapore and Switzerland compensate for their lack of resources by turning themselves into financial and banking hubs. Singapore developed its harbor facilities and made them the first-class transit port for ships carrying different commodities from Africa, Europe, and Middle East, and mainland Southeast Asia to countries in Asia Pacific. In most cases, however, countries from a regional alliance, for as saying goes, there is strength in the numbers. Countries form regional association for several reasons. One is for military defense. The most widely known defense grouping in the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or NATO, formed during the Cold War when several Western European countries plus the United States agreed to protect Europe against the threat of the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union responded by creating its regional alliance, the Warsaw Pact, consisting the Eastern European countries under Soviet domination. The Soviet Union imploded in December 1991, but NATO remains in place, and NATO still exists until now. Okay, in the next topic, we will discuss how many members of NATO.
Here is a video clip of how many members of NATO.
The alliance started with 12 member countries in 1949. However, the founding treaty allows for other European nations to join the alliance as long as all existing allies agree. Any prospective member must share NATO's core values and have the capacity and willingness to contribute to security in the Euro-Atlantic area. Today, NATO has 30 members who are stronger and safer together.
Countries also form regional organizations to pool their resources, get better returns for their exports, as well as expand their leverage trade against trading partners. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, was established in 1960 by Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, and Saudi Arabia and Venezuela to regulate the production of shale oil. This regional alliance flexed its muscles in the 1970s when its member countries took over domestic production and dictate crude oil prices in the world market. In a world highly dependent on oil, this integration becomes a source of immense power. OPEC's success convinced 9 other oil-producing countries to join it. Moreover, there are the countries formed that protect their independence of pressures for power politics. The president of Egypt, Ghana, India, Indonesia, and Yugoslavia created the Non-Aligned Movement, or NAM, in 1961 to pursue world peace and international cooperation and human rights. National sovereignty, racial and national equality, non-intervention, and peaceful conflict resolution. It called itself non-aligned because the association refused to side with either first world capitalist democracies in Western Europe and North America of the communist state in Eastern Europe. At its peak, the NAM had 120 members countries. The movement, however, will never formalize and continues to exist up to present, although it lacks the same fervor that it had in the past. Finally, economic crisis compels countries to come together. The Thai economic collapse in 1996 after foreign currency speculators and troubled international banks demanded that the Thai government pay back its loan. A rapid withdrawal of foreign investment bankrupted the economy. The crisis began to spread to other Asian countries as their currencies were also devalued. The foreign fund investments had left in a hurry. The International Monetary IMF or ASEAN tried to reverse the crisis, but it was only after the countries, along with China, Japan, South Korea, agreed to establish an Asian and emergency fund to anticipate crisis that the economies established. The crisis made ASEAN more unified and coordinated. The association has come a long way since it was formed, and coalition of countries which were pro-American and supportive of states' intervention in Vietnam. After the Vietnam War, ASEAN continued to act as a military alliance to isolate Vietnam after it invaded Cambodia, but there were also the beginnings of the economic cooperation.
Non-state regionalism. It is not only states that agree to work together in the name of a single cause. Communities also engage in regional organizing, so not just only the states. This new regionalism varies in form. They can be tiny associations that include no more than a few actors and focus on a single issue, or huge continental unions that address a multitude of common problems from territorial defense to food security. Organization representing non-governmental organizations, or what we call as NGOs, and associations to link up with one another in pursuit of a particular goal. Finally, new regionalism is identified with reformists who share the same values, norms, institutions, and systems that exist outside of the traditional, established mainstream institution. This new regionalism likewise rely on the power of individuals and systems. As you can see below, there are some examples of non-governmental organization: ActionAid, Oxfam, Compassion, Plan, Save the Children, Cook Care, and the Red Cross Corporation, also the part of the NGOs. Their strategies and techniques likewise varies. Some organizations partner with governments to initiate social change. Those who work with governments legitimizers participate in institutional mechanisms that afford some civil society groups voice and influence in technocratic policymaking process. For example, the ASEAN issued its Human Rights Declaration in 2009, but the regional body left it to member countries to apply the declaration's principles as they see fit, aware that democratic rights are limited in many Asian countries. New regionalism organization used this official declaration to pressure these governments to pass laws and regulations that protect and promote their human rights. In South America, left-wing governments support hemispheric social alliances, opposition to the North American Free Trade Agreement or the NAFTA, while members of the Mesa de Articulación de Asociaciones Nacionales y Redes de Unión de América Latina y el Caribe, roundtable of national associations and network and NGOs in Latin America and the Caribbean, participate in forums, summits, and the dialogues with presidents and ministers. Likewise, a group called the Citizen Diplomacy Forum tries to influence the policies and programs of the Organization of American States. In Southeast Asia, the Organization of Asian Parliamentarians for Human Rights was in part the result of non-government organizations and civil society groups pushing to prevent discrimination, uphold political freedom, and promote democracy and human rights throughout the region. Other regional organizations dedicate themselves to specialized causes. Activists across Central and South America established the Rainforest Foundation to protect indigenous peoples and the rainforest in Brazil, Guyana, Panama, and Peru. Young Christians across Asia, Africa, the Middle East, the Americas, and the Caribbean form regional interfaith youth networks to promote conflict prevention, resolution, peace education, and sustainable development. The Migrant Forum in Asia is another regional network of NGOs and trade unions committed to protecting and promoting the rights and welfare of the migrant workers. These organizations' primary power lies in their moral standing and their ability to combine lobbying with pressure politics. Unfortunately, most of them are poorly financed, which places them at a disadvantage when dealing with their official counterparts who have large state funds. Their impacts in global politics is therefore limited. New regionalism differs significantly from traditional state-to-state regionalism when it comes to identifying problems. For example, states treat poverty or environmental degradation as technical or economic issues that can be resolved by refining existing programs of state agencies, making minor changes in economic policies, and creating new offices that address these issues. However, new regionalism advocates, such as the NGO Global Forum, see these issues as reflections of flawed economic development and environmental models. By flawed, they mean economic development plans that are market-based, profit-driven, and hardly concerned with social welfare, especially among the poor. Another challenge for new regionalists is the discord that may emerge among them. For example, disagreements surface over issues like gender and religion, with pro-choice interests breaking from religious, civil society groups that side with the church, Muslim imams, or governments opposed to reproductive rights and other pro-women policies. Moreover, while civil society groups are able to dialogue with governments, the latter may not be welcoming to this new trend as set up one obstacle after another. Migrant Forum Asia and its ally, their coordination of action research on AIDS or CARAM, lobbied Asian governments to defend migrant labor rights. Their program of action, however, slowed down once countries like Malaysia, Singapore, and Thailand refused to recognize the rights of undocumented migrant workers and the rights of the families of the migrants.
Today, regionalism faces multiple challenges, the most serious of which is the resurgence of militant national and populism. The refusal to dismantle NATO after the collapse of the Soviet Union, for example, has become the basis of the anti-NATO rhetoric of Vladimir Putin in Russia. Now, even the relationship of the United States, the alliance core member with the NATO, has become problematic after Donald Trump demonized the organization as simple leeching of the American military power without giving anything in return. Perhaps the most crisis-ridden regional organization of today is the European Union. The continuing financial crisis of the region is forcing countries like Greece to consider leaving the Union to gain more flexibility in their economic policy. Anti-immigrant sentiments and a popular campaign against Europe have already led to the United Kingdom voting to leave the European Union in a move the media has termed the Brexit. ASEAN members continue to disagree over the extent to which member countries should sacrifice their sovereignty for the sake of regional stability. The associations linked with the East Asia has also been problematic. Recently, ASEAN countries also disagreed over how to relate China, with the Philippines unable to get the other countries to support its condemnation of China's occupation of the West Philippine Sea. When some formerly authoritarian countries democratize, this participatory regionalism clashed with ASEAN policy of non-interference as civil society groups in Indonesia, the Philippines, and Thailand demanded that the other countries democratize, adopt a more open attitude towards foreign criticism. A final challenge pertains to differing visions of the regionalisms that before Western government may see regional organizations not simply as economic formations, but also as instruments of political democratization. Non-Western and developing societies, however, may have different views regarding globalization, development, and democracy. Singapore, China, and Russia see democracies as an obstacle to the implementation and deepening of economic globalization because constant public inquiry about economic projects and leading debates slow down implementation or lead to outcomes. Democracy's tedious procedures must therefore give way of efficiency.
Official regional associations now cover vast swaths of the world. The population of the countries that joined the Asia-Pacific Economic Council, or the APEC, alone comprised 37% of the world's population in 2007. These countries are also part of the smaller organizations that include the Associations of Southeast Asian Nations, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the North American Free Trade Agreement, the Caribbean and the Pacific Group of 8 states, and the Union of the South American Nations. Even isolationist North Korea is part of the Regional Forum, which discusses security issues in the region. In the same way, the countries will find it difficult to reject all forms of global economic integration. It will also be hard for them to turn their backs on the regions. Even if the United Kingdom leaves the European Union, it must continue to trade with its immediate neighbors and will therefore be forced to implement many European Union rules. None of this is to say that regional organizations will remain unaltered. The history of regionalism shows that regional associations emerge as new global concerns arise. The future of regionalism will be contingent on the immense changes in global politics that will emerge in the 21st century.